Assalamu alaikum, Eid Mubarak. Let me add 3449 to 1780 and 1781, as the verse is said in Mecca upon the conquest of, clearing things out. Manifesting al-Hajj while Umrah was my 3rd of the 12th month of 1429 paper. It started when a kingly being came down with a meteor. The first family to encounter it decided that it was the center of a shrine to the one God, transcendent of comparison to others. As opposed to other places, there's no evidence that the meteor itself has ever been worshipped on an official basis. $6 million or so years later, turns out humans have been around for over 11 million years now, that find in Asia. But anyways, a prophet known to the people of Tahwe, the two lands, Dart, black, north or lower, and Qasmat, red, south or upper, called Idris, set up the place for those who would enter the valley of Baca, the house of souls. The house of the Ka and the Ba. Since then, there have been those weaving, spiraling, and walking between the pillars of dualism. The main rite was counterclockwise circles around the stone of 8, which usually had 5 to 11 pillars around it. 5 stayed in the same place, and a curved wall or row in one spot near it. The main people to this in those years were of Western Arabia, Southern Arabia, and the Sinai Peninsula. A little over 5,000 years ago, an erratic man named Ivram, father of joy, provider for others is what that name means, received the call to prophethood. He performed a stunt to remind his people of a God. They doubted what they made up for a moment, but decided to punish him. In one of those large furnaces Persians were later famous for, the god sent a light beam to show him the cool spot by one of the vents. He survived and went to the king Nimrod to teach him that God is more powerful than he. The king was convinced, but renounced it and sent Abram away. The revelation came to leave for Samaria. So despite that him and his wives desired to wait out the drought, they and his nephew Lut obeyed. In Sumer, he questioned what was God before those who went out to worship the stars, planets, moon, and sun. He showed them that no God can rise and fall in the sky. He went on through nomadic lands and Egypt. He caused an Egyptian king, or ruler of some sort, to regret his unrestrained lust. It was there that he received the name of Ibrahim, loves praising the Creator, and the nickname Khalil Allah, translated into Arabic, of course. Friend of the only power, friend of the worship-worthy. See Al-Quran 4:124. For spreading the message of this protecting friend, Al-Wali. He went with his eldest son up Mount Moriah in Solemn to sacrifice according to a dream he doubted but followed. God revealed, before he could cut Ismail, that it was a wish fulfillment dream and not to be like the people in their wicked ways. Instead of the usual lamb both of the horns of a nearby ram were grabbed. Some say it was two rams or sheep. There's actually a lamb that looks closer to the satanic goat than what people think is a goat, you know. Well, there's no satanic goat. You know what I mean? The people draw this head in a pentagram. Therefore, the tradition is to sacrifice 2 sheep per family. Those who are too poor may sacrifice as little as an egg, or and those who are rich may sacrifice as great as a camel, elephant, buffalo, or other big land animal that people can eat has been interpreted to be something to include also. According to Muhammad ibn Abdullah, now that's jurisprudence, that's not basic, these other animals. This land, now called Jerusalem, has been a center of pilgrimage even before Ibrahim, but remains as one in this age. Neanderthal actually used to come from far and wide to see Jerusalem for some reason back in the day. Probably some resource trading or something, but it could have been religious, because Neanderthal definitely shows evidence of such things. Ibrahim continued on to place his eldest and 7 of his wives in or around Becca. They built he's kept the eldest, and the 7 others were left in Arabia. They built up the house with the black stone in a corner of the cubed building. The place where he stood fossilized, and we have that to remain. Where he and Ismail were tempted are the Jumeirah pillars, standing where Ibrahim threw 7 rocks each at 3 spots. Thus, we do the same. After he left, there was a drought. Hajj and Ismail frantically went back and forth looking for water. Thereby we have the going between As-Safa wal Marwa, the negative and positive hillocks. Yahudi tradition, it's a broader word than just Jews, says that they had a communal meaning at the end of Chug or Hajj, dialect depending on how you're going to pronounce it. This is now what the Eid al-Udhiyah Salat, that's the current form. The Shia, some of the Shia, you raise your hands 5 times instead of 1 in the first bow, and 5 times also in the second bow set. The Sunni, it's all 7, then 5. They also, done in the morning, by the way, after the sun has risen a bit. They also maintain staying inside something where the sky could be seen. We do this at Mina, wrapped in tarps or in tents. Muhammad, when he went on Al-Hajj, while Umrah, greater, and Al-Hajj, Al-Umrah, greater pilgrimage or lesser pilgrimage. He shaved his head, but told people they could cut it after the sacrifices instead. This seal of the prophets also circumambulated counterclockwise around Al-Kaaba, the cubed building, 7 times, stayed at Mina, collected 49 rocks, and stood on Mount Arafat. Thus, we do the same.